As Bitcoin hits our targets in the mid to low $40,000 territory, it is time to be looking at three of the strongest assets within this market, Solana, Avalanche, and Terra Luna, to judge where they're headed next within the general market. With that said, welcome back to EllioTrades channel. I'm your host Krown, today coming from an undisclosed location in Dubai. You might even be able to hear the prayers going on in the background. That's our lovely culture that we're experiencing right here, which is amazing. Anyways, that is to say, however, that I'm away from my current battle station, and being away from my current battle station, you know, there's going to be limited resources sometimes, but I think we got just enough for today's video. I do want to take a second here to highlight the reason why we were focusing so much on Bitcoin in the past couple months. First, being very, cautious with further downside until certain targets were met. That was your $35,000 region. Now looking for that lovely bounce that we are within the midst of, and judging the stronger assets within this bounce, because those are the ones that are likely to be, well, one, legitimate, and two, have a good future. We're looking for the charts that generally go up and to the right, not the ones that go down and to the right. Those are the ones we want to avoid, unless, you're in shorting, which fair enough. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to start off with Avalanche. We're going to make this a rather simplistic analysis. We're going to only focus on the higher term timeframes. We will, as always, provide invalidation points for the general bias of this analysis. But this is not to say that lower term timeframes can't ebb and flow. They naturally will, and I just want to avoid that conversation right now because I want this video to be relevant for the next few weeks to come. So as Bitcoin bounces, we see Avalanche, one of the stronger ones, bouncing alongside with it. And generally speaking, as we do initiate targets higher, I am looking for this move to populate somewhere into our next targeted region, into the mid to low $90 region, maybe even as high as $100 in this case, something like that. Why is that? Because we did initiate a signal on, last week's closure. That is hidden bullish divergence right here on the weekly RSI. Why is this important and what does this mean? Well, there's a divergence between price and momentum. Price is making higher lows. In this case, we have a low right here, and our last low was right here. And momentum is making a lower low within the context of an uptrend. This is what's known as hidden bullish divergence. The reason why it's important is because when you see a divergence like that, typically what it means is, the psychology behind it is that, or the tangible, it's not necessarily psychology, it's like, tangible price action, is that bears were using more force to put price action down, aka that's why we got lower lows on RSI, but price action got on a higher low, so they got less of the way, and well, what happens after that? We essentially look at this as a correction for this time frame alongside declining volatility. Again, when we see volatility contract, we are looking at a measurement of the dispersion of returns. So that implies that, well, we're looking at a consolidation, and in this case, a correction as it once again lifts off here. So the next target I do believe is rather likely to get hit. The real question is, and the real focus is, what happens in this region right here between the 0.5 and the 618 Fibonacci retracement? That's basically between about $90 to $100. Well, if we do expect pullbacks within this region, and there's very likely going to be pullbacks along the way as well, no doubt about that. The real question is, after we do get a pullback, do we get a higher low, something like this? Okay, my drawings are absolutely terrible. I apologize. By the way, I read the comments on the last video. Absolutely brutal, absolutely hilarious as well. So thank you for that. My girlfriend had a good laugh with that, which is amazing. Anyways, so after we do hit this major region right here for the weekly specifically, we're not talking about lower term timeframes here. We do expect a pullback. The question is, what happens after the pullback? Does the pullback bring this asset back down into a higher low and then trade back above specifically $100? If it does do something like that, that would be macro bullish. We can say that the long-term correction is very likely over. We start to talk about targets into the 110 to 120-ish region, and perhaps onwards and upwards from there, although I suspect that this would very likely take a long time. We're not talking about anything happening this week, for example, or unlikely, I'd say. The doomium, however, and what you'd likely see Bitcoin do something similar as well, is you get a bounce off that, this same like $80 level or so after that next turn down, and then a lower high anywhere below wherever it gets up to on this current run, which presumably is probably in the mid, maybe even upper $90 regions, as high as $100, and then comes down specifically and breaks and closes below your $80 region. If you see something like that, very bad. Short term, however, compared to a weekly, it's going to be a daily, of course, right here. I would say that this move, and it would be immediately very cautious with implied targets back down somewhere around the lows in the $60 regions with any sort of a daily closure below $75. So that would be the more short-term invalidation to be cautious yet again. But for right now, you know, things looking good off the lows. Even the daily RSI reaching back up towards the bullish control zone, and daily volatility expanding off the lows as well. So this move does look like it has some legs on top of it, or under it. Under it, yes. Anyways, let's move on next to Solana. I want to make sure that I can see the time of this video here. Maybe I can adjust this as well. Okay, maybe not. Maybe not the time to be doing that right now. Apologies, talking to myself over here like a schizophrenic. Anyways, Solana, very similar setup as well, but you can see that it is not as relatively strong as Avalanche. Why is that? From a major moving average perspective on this bounce thus far, Solana is well below the cyan and the yellow 21 right there. Whereas we saw over here on the weekly, Avalanche is actually trading above the 21 and even into the 9, which is very interesting. Anyways, we do have a similar setup over here as well. And the first corrective target on this bounce has actually not been met just yet, which is about a $1.25 to a $1.30. So I am still looking for that to get hit. There is an invalidation on this one, which would again imply another move back down somewhere to, you know, your mid $80 lows. That is not relevant, however, not validated until we see a daily closure below about a $1.04. A $1.04 that is. Until then, yep, I'm still looking for this one to trade sideways and up here with the targeted region somewhere between about a $1.25, maybe even as high as a $1.30 to a $1.35. Very likely a short-term pullback right there. But the same thing more long-term on the weekly right here as Avalanche. What is that? We do have potential hidden bullish divergence. Yes, that is important. And the targeted regions for that would be about 145, maybe even as much as 165. But after it gets to that region there, and again, not happening anytime soon, if we do expect it to turn back down, but the question is, after it turns down, does it set in a higher low and then trade back above a $1.65 or a $1.70? Well, if that happens, we start to talk about targets into the 200s, and maybe even long-term corrections are over. If we see a bounce off the same level and then a crash back down, specifically about 125, 130-ish region on a closing basis, well, that's at the point where we're going to be looking at some very long-term downside. Okay. All right, so we got that one. Was there anything else in the daily that I missed here? Yeah, your daily RSI is looking very similar to Bitcoin. Daily volatility, very similar here as well off the lows, which is, good. Anyways, moving on to Terra Luna. Already given away my hand right there. But again, in terms of relative strength, this one and Solana are kind of like neck and neck, to be fair. I guess Solana is a little bit less than Terra Luna in this case. But still, the first target has not been met in the low $60 region between 60 and 62. So I am still looking for that to get met. There, of course, as always, is going to be an invalidation on this with targeted regions back down to 47-ish, let's call it. And that would be initiated. That would be essentially validated with the daily closure anywhere below 53.25. Until then, I do look for this one to trade sideways and up in line with the rest of the market, as I see Bitcoin trade up towards $43,000 now, which is great. Let me go back on over here. And let's go to the weekly. And do we have that same drive of potential hidden bullish divergence here? No, we do not. So that is a bit of a concerning thing. Again, and long term, even after it does hit that first target, which we would expect, a short-term pullback from, very likely sets into a higher low from there. The real major area of skepticism is the 68 to 75.5 region right here. It's the exact same thing as the other charts as well. If you see something like this, comes back down, puts in a higher low, and then trades back above that 75.5 region, great. Long-term, perhaps that correction is over, and we start talking about moon boy targets yet again, or, maybe not moon boy targets, but like $9,200 again, which would be great. The doomium is that we get something like this, where it pops into here, comes back down, tries for that, and then bloop, comes back down, closes below that 61.5 target. And well, at that point, very likely looking at a long-term down market for this one. But these three assets in particular have had some more relatively strong responses. I thought that they were very much relevant to bring up on a video like this. Feel free to let me know what assets that you're looking at in the I was going to say the description below, but the comment section below. And hopefully this video serves you well. I feel like I'm missing something over here, but yeah, looking at the daily right now, this one actually could very well look corrective here. Again, below 53 spot 30, I would say that that's a major warning signal. It's not a major warning signal. It's very likely going to come back down to the the $45 to $47 lows after that if it were to happen. But for right now, still give it the benefit of the doubt. Again, as long as Bitcoin does remain short-term strong, that is good. Okay, cool. I think this is a good place to leave this one off. I hope this one serves you well. Take care and see you hopefully soon.